Today's topic is around career development and internal career mobility. Who are we? So that photo on the left, we're using Mentimeter to drive the slides today, and it's not being kind to my photo. It looks like a police criminal fit picture. My name is Tim Edwards. I'm a solution lead within LHH. So we do a huge range of servicing for clients around coaching, assessments, helping clients be more mobile, running workshops like this one. My role is to pick the best one of those and help develop our newest and best thinking. And I'm ably joined today, ably assisted by my colleague Clinton, who's joined at very short notice just to be a talking partner with me. So Clinton, do you want to do a brief intro? I think maybe Clinton's got a bit of a technical challenge there. So Clinton is one of our relationship management directors. So many of you will know Clinton. Clinton runs and manages teams, and we wanted to bounce around some day-to-day experience. Clinton's managed a lot of people within this organisation, so we wanted to bring some of Clinton's thinking along as well. So that's who's talking to you today. Who are we, more broadly? So LHH sit within the Adecco group, that is a fantastic family of organisations focused around talent, getting the best out of people at work, hiring people, helping people move around, helping people make the right career decisions for them. LHH's mission is really build better careers, build better leaders, build better businesses. That's mine and Clinton's mission as well. We love that. Values, passion, team spirit, entrepreneurship, customer focus, responsibility. I think today's topic around careers really majors on that last one, responsibility. You owe it to your team to do this well, and you owe it to your organisation to make the most of the workforce available to you. So it really is around responsibility. And we've got businesses and offices all around the world. We use some of that to drive our own internal research and external research. So a lot of what you see today is grounded in reality. We will talk about some models, but we do see this come to bear in day-to-day life. I mentioned there's a lot of you on the line. So what we're going to do is some interaction. So hopefully many of you have used Mentimeter. If you grab your phone, or because there's quite a lot of Mentimeter today, if you open up a Chrome or Internet Explorer browser, if you go to www.menti.com, and I'll do the same on my phone now, www.menti.com, and when you go there at menti.com, you'll see there's a space to enter a code. So your screen will now look a little bit like this, or if it's in your internet browser, you'll see a similar look. And if you type in the following code, it's 8674 5836. Just hit submit, and you'll see a little chat window there on your phone or in your browser. Just tell us where you are today, and I'll do the same just so we can see who's on and see what we've got. So we've got people in all over the place. We've got Hungary, Dublin, we've got me down there in Sheffield, Edinburgh, lots of people in London coming through, some people in the lovely New Forest. Fantastic, Portsmouth, Brighton, brilliant. Right, great to see you all coming online. So I'd really, nothing worse than just listening to someone talk for hours and hours and hours. We'll have plenty of chance to discuss some of the topics today. I do want your input. We've got a lot of bright people on the line. We've got 157 very bright people on the line. So thanks for letting us know where you are. Please do keep that internet browser window open, or keep the mobile in front of you. So, selfish purposes first. We'll get all the selfish stuff out of the way. We're quite keen to know who's on the line, just so we can adjust the voiceover a bit. You could have hundreds of these categories. So if you're an HR leader, an employee working within HR, if you're both an HR leader or HR manager and a line manager, if you're just someone who's a line manager, or if we haven't quite got you and you're someone else who's on the line, great to know who's on. So we've got quite a lot of HR leaders and people who work within HR. We've got 12 or 13 managers. So it'd be great for those of you who are actively managing people, you can bring some of that experience and thinking to bear. Great. And I hope you're in the other bracket that you find today helpful as well. So thanks so much for giving us just a rundown of where you are. And if you're still voting, don't worry. It's given us a view of how to sort of slant the discussion, because there were quite a lot of topics in the flyer that went round. It was around managing employee conversations and fostering mobility. And the two really are linked. So we'll try and cover questions from organizational, how do we get people moving point of view, but also I'm trying to move my people around point of view. Brief plug for tomorrow, we'll get all the selfish stuff out of the way. There's a brilliant webinar my fantastic colleague Russell will be doing tomorrow. That's for individual contributors, so for employees. How do you take control of your own career? And it doesn't matter what level you're at, there are some key principles there that will help. So please do check that out. If you want to know more, please do drop us an email. I'm tim.edwards@lhh.com. I can sort you out with the details there. But that's for tomorrow, and that's very much around individuals. If you go on that, it'll help bring some of today's content to life as well. So hopefully that's useful. And what are we going to cover today? We'll do some scene setting. Many HR leaders on the call, so I think most of you are probably familiar with that. But then we're going to look back. What can cave people teach us about career conversations? It's human nature. It's fundamental. What can we bring to life? How can we use some human thinking around our career conversations? What does A-star career management look like? So we'll bring one of LHH's core frameworks to life. We'll have a bit of discussion along the way, and then we'll wrap and close, and we'll try and get you out the door as promptly as we can, just in time for your lunch. So setting the scene, let's do a bit of scene setting. Big picture to keep in mind, what are we aiming for? So a classic definition of career engagement is this. We want people to stay. We've seen the Great Resignation, we've seen millions of people walking out the door, so we really want to help you retain your workforce. We also want people to promote where they are and say good things about where they are, and say good things about their team or division that they're moving in. And we want people to strive. And that's the combination that we need. So you may see, for example, I used to work in the energy sector, and there were a lot of what you might term old school energy sector, heavily used to unionized days, people who worked in that division. And they would tell me stories about honesty. They used to do their total quota at the start of the week. In 2 days, they'd work like mad, and then they would actively do that so they could spend the next couple of days doing hardly anything at all. And their working week was built around actually having an easier ride. So they would stay, they'd say good things about working there, but they weren't striving. Similarly, we've all met people, wonderful people working in the NHS. They're working so hard. So they're going to strive and they're going to stay. But somebody goes out of their way to write a book like "This is going to hurt." Actually, people don't often advocate the NHS as a comfortable place to work, and that restrains a lot of talent from coming in. So really, the sweet spot's in that middle. How do we get people to stay, say, and strive in the face of change? So hopefully that a lot of you can relate to that. And we know that actually over time we can start to drift away from that sweet spot. And there's a brilliant book which I'm going to plug a few things along the way. I strongly recommend checking this out. It's by Whitney Johnson. There's a YouTube of it as well, and she talks about actually the need to disrupt our own careers. And actually, if you start to proactively disrupt your own career, if you start to move yourself into a stretch zone, actually that's so good for you. Just refreshes your thinking, enriches your way of working. So a little plug up front, and just keep that career sweet spot in mind. Scene setting more broadly. Does anyone know what this is? Martechs Law. I'll talk through it really briefly. Over time, what you see is the pace of change in our world. So new things coming online, new technology coming along, new ways of thinking, business disruption is going faster and faster. So initially we had mechanization, we came up with machines, then we mass produced, and we had really the first proper industrial revolution. Then we start inventing electronic technology, and now we're in this electric ecosystem where technology is moving so ridiculously quickly. Actually, things are obsolete sometimes before they're even brought to market. So we're just moving faster and faster and faster. However, actually, Martech's observations are this: technology changes at an exponential rate, but actually, businesses, we're changing at a logarithmic rate. We're actually just changing a bit, we're changing a bit. And the organizations that are going to profit and prosper, and the individuals who are going to profit and prosper, are going to be those people and those organizations who get career fit. And really, that's what we want today to be all about. Is about how do we best help that happen, and how do you as a line manager, if you're a line manager on this call, how do you help that happen? Of course, there's a financial cost to this. There's an opportunity being missed. And there's also a cost being borne at the moment. So one example of many on the left-hand side, Financial Services Commission, a great piece of research, reskilling. So keeping people in reskilling can save £49,000 per employee. You could also read that as not reskilling can lose you £49,000 per employee. So we know there's an imperative there to do it. And actually, if you look on the right-hand side, Adecco did a great piece of research around resetting normal. And actually, if you ask people who are actually doing the do, many people say they're not satisfied with career prospects. The managers aren't encouraging time and resources for training. 38% are thinking of changing jobs and already doing it. So we know there's this sort of juxtaposition of we've got to get people moving faster, we've got to keep people in the sweet spot, but actually we're not quick to do it. That's a bit of scene setting, and probably not new news to you, but hopeful to set the ball rolling. But for all those HR leaders and HR managers on the call, I just want you to do yourselves a favour. You don't need to write this down, but just take a pause and just think about the best career conversation you ever had. And maybe think about the worst career conversation you ever had. Why was it so bad? Why was it so good? And then think, thirdly, about that moment you decided, that's it, I'm moving. And it could be for good reasons. It could be, oh, maybe I can do this. And you decide to move. It could be for a negative reason. Oh, that's it. So-and-so got the promotion and I didn't, I'm off. So just have a think, just pause for yourself and have a think about that. And Clinton, this is the first sort of moment where I'm going to pick on you a little bit, just while people think about that. I asked you to have a think about these. So I don't know if you're able to share your own brief story about, one of these three. I've got my own story. So I work for, I'm happy to give kudos to people who I've worked with. There's a wonderful lady who works at Baringa Partners now. She's been on the TV a little bit now, called Vanessa Clark. She's one of the partners in the advisory practice there. And I worked for her, and I had a project and it didn't go well. And I actually did not perform well. We had a workshop, I was nervous, I was bumbly. And Vanessa actually gave me the most helpful conversation that I've ever had around that kind of piece of work. She acknowledged the feedback. She helped me discover it myself. We had an open conversation, but I always had that feeling she was on my side. And actually that we'd hit the bottom now, and she advocated me. She said I had loads of potential and she was going to take me forward. So you can deliver a really, really quite brutal message. And if you do it in the right way, you can unlock people's careers. You can unlock them, and really that's the subtle art. So hopefully you've had a bit of time to think about yourselves. That's just to provide a bit of context, and to give you some food for thought as we go through. So we've done the scene setting. Let's go back in time. What can cave people teach us about career conversations? And you're probably wondering why I'm talking about this. Well, think about the moment you decided to make a move. One of those three stories. Think about that exact moment in time. And I'll just take a poll from everybody. Just move a little dot and then hit submit. Was that decision rational? Was it, well, here are my facts, here's my pros and cons list, or was it more emotional? You can place that wherever you want. But I know for me, certainly I was 3/4 of the way over to the left. There was a rationale. I didn't just go nuts and decide to move. But there was this building of pressure. And the thing that actually released me to make that move, whenever I've shifted a project, decided to take some development work on, it's so much more been around the emotions. So it's great to see your plots coming through. Thanks so much for sharing. And that's really why I wanted to start with some of the cave person thinking. Was actually to kind of get us thinking about the emotional drivers, because by the way, fantastic, another person I'll plug all day, Antonio Damasio. We're not thinking animals that happen to be able to feel, we're actually feeling animals that happen to think. We need to get people, when we have these conversations, excited. We need to get them feeling calm. We need to get them in the right headspace to receive the news. And I've had a few times in my career where people have told me feedback and it has been actually quite positive. But the emotional drawbridge has been pulled up by me. Or you're trying to tell someone some feedback and they've done so much good, but there's that one thing and you phrase it badly and the drawbridge comes up. And actually anything you say from that point on is redundant. And whilst there's a huge amount of resource being poured at the moment into technology, we have our own technology we'd be happy to talk to you about, around technology around moving and logistics around moving, role and competency frameworks, all this stuff. Actually, it's the emotions. And if you're trying to have a career conversation with someone and you don't get the fundamentals around the emotions right, no word you say is going to be paid attention to. So that's why I wanted to start in that space. And we'll start with this person here, David Rock. Now, I expect, given that I've got a lot of HR leaders, many of you might be familiar with his work. Brilliant book as well, Your Brain at Work. And David Rock is, among many things, an expert evolutionary psychologist. And evolutionary psychology, if you're someone who's not from much of an L&D background, is really how we've evolved to, in terms of mindset and behaviors, so that we keep our genes in the gene pool. So there are some really fundamental things at play that David Rock pinpointed when he created and co-authored the SCARF model. We're going to talk through SCARF now, and we're just going to bring it to life a little bit and why each one of these things is fundamentally important. So we're going to play a bit of a movie quiz. So just to kind of keep it fresh and keep things moving. The first S. Feel free to pop it in chat. What's the movie? Doesn't start with S, by the way. And what does the S stand for? So if you can just pop that in the chat, that'd be great. And Clinton, I don't know if your audio is working, but if your audio is working, I don't know if you know the movie, and if you can give us a brief synopsis.
Can you hear me this time?
Yes, we can.
Good. Yes, I've had to improvise, but I'm back.
Great. Thanks, Clinton. So if you can see the slide, and I don't know if we've got people entering on the chat, but what's the S for? Or what's the movie? Any guess? Well, I'll put you out of your misery. We've got a few people, I think, coming through on the chat. So the movie's Trading Places, and in that movie, at the start, Eddie Murphy is homeless, and in the true sort of American sense of the word, he's down and out. He really is, out of society. Dan Aykroyd's character is a stock trader. He's got everything, and there are some very cruel trading house owners who decide actually they're going to make these big trade places. So they plummet Dan Aykroyd's career, they make him lose his house and everything, and they decide they're going to bring on Eddie Murphy as a trader. And there's this real flip in status in the film. It's brilliant. I really highly recommend it. But drawing us back to David Rock, in cave person times, a loss of status would have got you killed. Who's the first person going into that cave to see if there's a saber-toothed tiger in there? There's some enemy potentially on the horizon. Who's going to go and check that out? Is it going to be our most senior person? No, it's going to be the person we can afford to lose. So status, we are really, really sensitive to. Anytime you've got a career conversation around, mobility, whether it's where somebody's at in their career, that is a massive trigger. It's the first of the 5 triggers of the SCARF model. So as managers, S is for status, and what can we do? So I'll ask you to pop things in into Mentimeter now. What can you do to make sure you're having that conversation with someone? What are things you can do to make sure that your employees' relationship status helps rather than hinders them? What are some tips around actually not triggering that person to feel like their status is going to drop? So I'll give you a second to type your thoughts, and you can think about that as either a manager who's having a conversation or with your organizational leadership hat on. So empowerment, yeah, that's a massive one. Actually making people feel, you're going to help discover this with me. Help them understand the value they add, yeah. Be supportive, recognize them, honest interest, regular feedback, clarify their importance, open door or no door, yeah. So absolutely, you're important to me. Speak to them as an adult. Delegate responsibly, demonstrate trust, discuss visibility in networks. Brilliant, we'll come on to talk about that down the track. Got some great answers coming. Thank you so much. So yeah, and psychological safety is a huge one as well. So there's a massive thing around that, like my colleague Vanessa did with me in my story. She actually had to give me some quite difficult feedback, but actually it was all directed towards the positive. Even if you're giving someone some negative feedback, and she didn't say, you're not good enough, she talked about behaviors. So she very much divorced the behavior and the gaps from my personality and me. So that was fantastically helpful for me. The other thing is around making moves internally is actually people are very sensitive to role titles. And if we want people to start moving, we have to start getting better at giving decent role titles. A lot of the time people get hung up on level, but actually just, the title of a role, subtleties like that, paying attention to that, a huge bearing. Got some fantastic input here. Thank you so much, everybody. A few other stock answers. So frame your feedback. So I think I've talked about that, list someone's positives, all the great potential about them. Few development points, help them co-discover that. And then end that conversation on a high as well. So really frame the feedback and recognize their contributions, expose them to stretch projects. So I can't give you a promotion now, but what I can do is help to get you moving. Let's get you moving in that direction, and then sell roles. We'll talk about that later. And as organizational levels, make role titles appealing and provide avenues for recognition. So I might not be able to give Clinton a promotion, but actually I can make Clinton feel like a rock star. I can make him feel his status is elevated because Clinton's up for an Employee of the Month award. Actually, I've tagged Clinton on LinkedIn and I've said, at Clinton's talk, really fantastic, really helpful. So I can give that feeling of elevated status. I can expose people to senior resources. So one of the contributions we had in the open chat was around open doors. So actually getting senior people to actually give these people a tap on the shoulder, some recognition, that gives you that psychological lift. And a bit manipulative, but using fear of missing out. So if we want people to start moving around, actually recognize those people who have moved. Make a big deal out of, yeah, so-and-so's moved. Let's have a look at this. Let's have a talk about their experiences moving. Aren't they well? Aren't they brave? So try to really get people to feel, if I don't start thinking about moving, actually, in some senses, it's useful for me, to start thinking about it, because otherwise my status is going to drop. So really, we're cruising through this, clattering through it, but S for status, a few tips there. Okay, name the movie. A bit more famous than perhaps Trading Places was. 1 point for the movie, 1 point for what the C stands for, the scarf. So if anyone want to name that movie? Okay, all right, give it a second. So movie is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And during this, there's a scene in which Indiana Jones has got millions of different cuts. And some of them are shiny and some of them are massive and some of them are really old. And, there's that feeling of tension. And tension is a key tenet of any film or storytelling narrative. And we've got this massive trigger with uncertainty. And if you want people to move, there'll be loads of stuff they are uncertain about. Absolute heaps. So what can we do if I'm trying to encourage someone I'm talking to move, if I'm organizationally setting myself up to try and engender a feeling of increased certainty? So I'll just open up the chat again to tips. I'm very happy to hear from them. And Clinton, conscious you were sort of forcibly muted. So anything you can do, anything you've done in the past to reassure people or to help people have an increased feeling of certainty when it comes to these conversations.
Yes. So we'll try again. Can you hear me, Tim?
I can hear you loud and clear, Clinton.
Fantastic. There's a pause there. I did wonder for a second. But yeah, this is an interesting area actually, because it's slightly different to the topic you're on, but we're advertising for some sales roles at the moment, and we've got quite a bit of interest from people internally inquiring really as to whether they would like to move into sales, whether they're right, because they may have been doing a related job. And it's really good to have that conversation in a coaching way, which is around talking to them about what the role is and where their skill sets are and how they see themselves, actually, is what I found really helpful in those conversations, and about helping them to establish where they're at and actually what steps might they need to take if they're not quite at that point yet to move into sales. And 9 times out of 10 in the couple of conversations I've had, both in the few conversations that I've had, all of those people have kind of arrived at their own conclusion based on the conversation, and they've been really grateful for the conversation rather than not being clear, but they've been really clear about what they need to do next, whether that's to apply for the role or whether that's need to go away and do something different, or whether sales is just not for them, and now that they've been able to make a decision where they're at.
Yeah, brilliant. I think we've had a few people on the chat say about this, the process of coaching and having a discussion around it. We'll go into this in a minute. There's a brilliant HBR article that actually one of our clients, client of ours from BT, so Ian, if you're on, Ian highlighted a brilliant HBR article around immunity to change. And sometimes people have a view of the world and it's very fixed. And people think, well, if I move there, people might judge me in this way. People might think this. And they're worrying. They're worried about how they're perceived, or they're worried about how life might be different. And until we start asking and working through that with them, can't move forward. So coaching and asking and discovering and unlocking is such an important skill for us to try and focus on. Other great suggestions in the chat, so thank you so much for those. I think being transparent is really, really important. Open regular conversations, draw the journey and experience. So actually, talk about overall direction, get closer to people's skills. Some fantastic answers coming through. Thank you for those. A few things that I picked out. So, reassure people. Sounds obvious, but actually very often we go, well, this right here, that might be interesting for you. We almost cut the conversation short. So just be conscious of people having some stress or nerves around it. Focus on strengths. So the more and more I might raise Clinton's strengths, it might not matter that Clinton's only an 80% stretch for that role. If Clinton can major on those 80% strengths that are there, that's going to emotionally carry him through to think about the role. So keep reminding people of strengths. What about some audition projects? So if you've got somebody who you think, they might benefit from a move here, if they've got any bandwidth, or if you can carve it out for them, what about a little project just to get them some exposure to that area? And then encourage directional development. So talk about people's fundamental skills, interests, areas, passions, and we'll talk about this down the track, and actually start encouraging them to develop in advance, so that when the right role comes up, the gap's less. As organizations, so brilliant practical suggestion, meet the area. So we're very much in the Zoom world at the moment. Actually, we've lost a sense of community and knowing and seeing each other's teams. So meet the area is a great little stunt you can pull to just say, well, I'm going to expose team A to team B. Maybe that'll help people feel more certain about moving. Share success stories about people who have moved. Give trials or rotation, role and skill clarity. I worked with a large water client about 5 years ago, and they didn't have a clear role structure. And there was a massive piece of work to clarify that, just so that people could more easily navigate. And there's some technology you can put in place to do that. We'll be happy to talk to you about that, of course. And then think about more broadly. So, if you can help people think about their finances, and actually logistically help them support their development. So just be clear, there is support available and there is training available. So some ideas there that we can think of with an organisation hat on. Okay, hopefully everyone will get this. A is for, so what's the kind of primary driver that David Rock hit upon? We are very, very sensitive when we lose our sense of autonomy. And everyone's got an employee like this in their team, get that person who might be suggesting the right thing for you, but they don't want to be crowbarred around by you. It's got to come from them. And it's too easy when we're trying to move people, especially when we're very keen to move people, to actually ignore the process of them coming to their own conclusion. So Clinton explained that eloquently about the moves that he's made to kind of coach people in or out coming into his business development team. Actually, we need people to come to their own conclusions. So what can we do to help? If you've got an employee who's a bit touchy, and that autonomy is a big deal for them now, what are some ideas we can have? So just pop a few in the chat. This one will cover relatively quickly, but a few ideas would be always welcome. We'll just take maybe a handful. We'll take the first handful that come out in the chat, and then we'll move ourselves on. And hopefully this is useful for everybody using the Menti chat, just because it just saves on us having to, type things into chat. Yeah, allow for failure. Yeah, that's a good one. Allow people to take a bit of a risk. Don't undermine them. Demonstrate some trust. Shared accountability. So yeah, I think that's a massive one actually. If you're somebody who wants to run off on their own, actually that's great, but let's have a conversation. Let's align our aspirations. Let's align our goals. Talk about options, pros and cons. Yeah, lead through questions. That's an absolutely brilliant one. Avoid micromanaging. So there's that sweet spot really, isn't there, between keeping someone accountable, for delivering what they need to deliver, but also letting them explore, and then coaching them, asking, ask their way out of their current role rather than tell. So a few tips as managers, coach and listen. Do check out that immunity change article. It's on the HR. It's fantastic. Actually, really get close to people's drivers. Be transparent. Provide notice. So the more we can do to be aware of where growth roles might be happening and to surface those, the more those people who are heavily autonomous and who want to move and are naturally itchy and want to get going around, the more we can do to make those visible early and share messages about that around growth areas, the more likely we are to avoid flipping into pushing people into moves late. So try and provide early notice of what's coming up. And in some cases, only some, you've almost got to accept a happy leaver. You know, if the roles that are coming up aren't the right fit, there does come a point, if we know our employees well, where we say, well, I don't want you to go down into that. I'm going to stay, but I'm not going to particularly strive or say good things about the company. And there comes a point where you think, well, actually, the right thing maybe is for you to move and to be a happy mover. Maybe you'll come back because we treated you on that discussion was so truthful. Employee organizations, so provide role visibility early, enable development time and conversations. So actually, a lot of the time, and there's some LHH research around this, the amount of working hours we've done has just increased. I think in the UK, it's something around the 14% mark. I can't remember exactly offhand. But we've got to start carving out time to actually have conversations and actually start those people who want to start exploring and be autonomous to do so. Mentoring, 360 mentoring, career counsellors. So those people who want to get busy and they want to have a say and do give them those channels. So some simple tips for us there. Anybody know this film? Quite a famous one of David Rock's 5 drivers. R is for Relatedness. And this film is from Castaway. And in that film, Tom Hanks gets stuck on an island for something like 2 years. And he's so desperate for relationships. He's so desperate for that connection. He actually kind of creates a character in his mind out of a volleyball that was left with him. He calls it Wilson. And we do have that feeling of, I love the people I'm with. I need that connection. And there's this group over here and I don't know them. And maybe I had one meeting with someone and I didn't get a warm feeling about them. You're trying to move me into a certain role. Are you pushing me out? Is that a challenge for us? So there are all these challenges that can very much spring from people. So if you've got somebody for whom relatedness is a bit of a trigger, and I'm one of these people, by the way. So if I ever end up working for or with you, massively touchy around relationships, but we're trying to have a career conversation. We're trying to move more, and what things can we do to help? So we'll just pop a few items in the chat. Just to give you shared experiences. So work alongside them. Give them a bit of exposure to other people. So actually, do you try and foster some intros? Do you try and help people build their network? That's a really helpful tip around this conversation. Time for one-to-ones. That's a massive one, actually. Making sure that you don't fall into that trap of pushing your one-to-one every week. Align on purpose and meaning. How they fit in their own unique talents. How much you value them. Support them to build new relationships. Include them. Show appreciation. So we've got some really, really good ones there. To just if you're that manager, you're having that conversation. Dial our empathy. So some really, really helpful tips there. A few items I put there. Foster psychological safety. So I might be saying to Clinton, sorry, Clinton, I keep picking on you. But I might be saying to Clinton, Clinton, have you thought about moving to another team? Or Clinton's got we talked about the value of Clinton expressing himself to me. I need to get Clinton in a place where he feels safe enough around me to say, well, actually, Tim, I'm kind of interested in this. And he's going to know that I'm not going to judge him for being interested in something that isn't related to what we're working on. So foster psychological safety. We can do that by being more open about ourselves. We can do that by, one of the contributions to that chat earlier was around actually making ourselves accepting of people's challenges and development points, checking regularly with people, drive introductions for those people, recognize the small things and always tie back to the individual and their own strengths. So I might have to say to Clinton one day, Clinton doesn't work for me, by the way, but, I might have to say to Clinton, well, actually, let's consider some moves, or I'm really sorry, Clinton, you haven't got the promotion this time, or whatever it is, but I can still make that person feel cared for. I can list their strengths over and over again. I can remember the small things about them, like their family members, that personal connection makes a huge difference. And as organizations, networking events, learn together, try to rather than compartmentalize a learning cohort, try to actually put them on the same course. That's often a great way for people to network and learn. Align goals across the organization. And we'll talk about that down the track. and role model connectedness. So if people see a leadership team aren't connected and they all don't know each other, that very quickly permeates through. So just, hopefully, as an HR leader in this, some of these things that triggers for you to think, well, actually, gosh, that's a good point. Do I even know the rest of my leadership team? So, and how well do I know them? So, really important, the last one. And the final one, F. So does anybody know, I'm going to name the film or the driver? So The Last of David Rock's fundamental human allergies, if you like, things we're really, really triggered by. I'll give it a few seconds just to pop my chat, and then we'll go from there. The film is To Kill a Mockingbird. Brilliant book, brilliant film, all about searing inequality and unfairness. And actually, this is a major driver for a lot of people who end up leaving. Someone else gets that promotion, or I perceive someone else as preferred for no good reason, or you're telling me I can't get this, but I've done all these different things. And what we're seeing with the Great Resignation is a lot of the driver around our dearly departed colleagues who are leaving is around fairness. So if you've got somebody for whom R isn't for fairness, F is for fairness. If you've got somebody for whom fairness is a trigger, what can we do? How can we approach those difficult conversations? And while you're all talking, I'll cut to my answer, which is fairness starts in advance. If you're there at the point where you're having that conversation and you're having to scrabble around and think, oh gosh, actually, did I have my goal setting conversation with them? Are the expectations clear from them for this year? Actually, have I tracked their feedback as we've gone along? If you've cruised for a year and then you've got to have a conversation, it's 20 times harder than if you've done all that as we go. So regular conversations is a massive key tenet of succeeding in this area. The second, I think, is a brilliant catch there, catch your own biases, and how others may perceive your biases. So it might be that you in one call are a bit pally with one particular person, or you slightly disregard someone else. You've got to constantly have your radar on around bias. Adult to adult conversations, so actually being quite transparent with people about what's there, meaningful and actionable feedback. Yep, brilliant. Listen and acknowledge. Be honest, be transparent. Clear, non-transparent processes, honest and transparent communication. So we've got some great thoughts there. But the main one I would say is, if you're panicking before that career conversation, have a think through the past 12 months. What can you learn? What could you have done when that person joined, when you're in flow with that conversation? And what are the lessons you can learn? So that the next time you have a conversation, actually, a great career conversation relationship is a bit like a zip doing up. And you've got all these data points that go along, and then you reach the destination. And you don't want to get to the point where actually time's passed, and suddenly you've got to connect your world and their world. It should be like a zip being done up. So just keep it flowing. Thanks for the fantastic input, everybody. A few stock examples: so set criteria up front, evidence gather, own the narrative, and empathize. So sometimes it's not fair. Sometimes you've got 3 brilliant people going for a role, and there's only one space. You've got to own the narrative. So don't flip into, oh, it's not fair. But we'll talk about that, brilliant book to move on that down the track. Structure and be conscious of bias. As organizations, establish transparency, be super clear on roles, what roles are available, what's involved in those, clarity around selection criteria, process, structure, and then, use technology where appropriate. So we've covered the SCARF model. I'll just invite you all to have a bit of a think, having thought through that, just checking for yourself, what's your biggest trigger? So you specifically, which one of those resonates the most? I know for me, I've put my one in, I said relatedness. So relatedness is massive for me. Clinton, I know that you've been sat there, you're brought on as my talking friend. I think we blasted through that to play a bit of catch up on time. What's your biggest, if you don't mind sharing?
Yes, thanks, Tim. I think my biggest trigger for career conversations is probably if you've got a team who's highly performing and everybody wants a promotion or everybody wants a pay rise. It's how to be fair, as you've described it, but how to make sure that everybody walks away feeling that they've got what they needed, even if that isn't a promotion or money.
Yeah. Brilliant. What a brilliant approach and attitude. I think that's it. Any conversation you have, you've got to leave that room feeling, yeah, values, like you've got what you needed in terms of steer, clarity of position, and you're going to get what you need in terms of development support and what have you. So contracting during a development conversation is really important. You've got that checkpoint with someone, well, that's a bit unfair. Okay, what do you need for me to do? What can I do to make it more fair? Note that down and do it, because that will then, start to iron out some of the habitual creases that build up in our day-to-day management. So hopefully that's been helpful to check in on, what cave people can teach us. There's one more ingredient, which is around our willingness to share feedback, and the conversation is at the heart of this. So this is really an elongated plug for a book by Kim Scott. What Kim Scott did, and there's some brilliant YouTubes on Kim's work as well, is really divided people who hold conversations into 4 buckets, and we can flip around these a little bit. But actually, are we silent on things that are a bit tricky, or do we tackle them head on? And when we do so, do we care about that person on the end of that conversation personally, or don't we? And are we quite self-centered? And effectively, and there's some brilliant stories and examples during the book, which we don't have time to do justice to today, but please do check it out. I'll cover these off. We've all met somebody who's seen a bit too much Alan Sugar, and they think, I'm going to just tell it to this person straight, but it's cold and it's dispassionate, or it's dismissive, discounts that person's value as an individual. So think about that scarf model. The S, I'm not going to bother treating you like you're valued. Your status to me is low. I'm out the door. So whilst we need to be honest with people, we've also got to be kind. The next one is ruinous empathy. So this is where I sometimes fall into. I'm a really nice guy. Clinton works for me. I care so much about Clinton, but I don't want to upset him. And actually, in so doing, I'm just letting the reality pass through. So we've got to maybe be a bit assertive with ourselves and say, I'm going to do this. We'll talk about some tips to help do that in a minute. The third one is in many ways worse. I've only worked for a couple of people who perform into this bracket, where they're not really willing to say what they really think. They dance around the topic, or they just say, yeah, you're fine, you're fine. They don't really care. There's not even that care, that sense of care. So it's quite a snaky little bracket. And I think sometimes we can all sort of fall into that bracket if we're not careful and conscious. But the last one, really the one I want to talk about, is this sweet spot, which is radical candor. And that's the name of the book. Do check it out. Actually, I'm going to express myself to you clearly but kindly. And in one of our sessions we talk about parachute phrases, those repeatable phrases like, you have so much potential, it's terrifying. There's a few things that I observe, and you tell me what you think that are getting in the way. What's the main thing you're going to remember? It's going to be, you've got so much potential, it's terrifying. And you're going to be emotionally bought into listening. So check out Radical Candor. It's a really excellent, simple model, just, that can sit across that whole scarf piece, and really is a great guide to helping support it. Okay, there's also some brilliant frameworks. So Grow's great one, Cigar's another one, and there's you can talk to us about those as well. So just if you're somebody who's not good at having these kind of conversations, you find them intimidating or what have you, check those out. They're really, really useful, easy, just an easy way to structure things in a way that is reliable and repeatable, and helps you to convey the right emotions. Let's take a check-in. I mentioned where I sat on this. Just be interesting across our group to see where people sit. So I mentioned I sometimes, if I'm really honest, fall into that ruinous empathy grouping. I know we've got a lot of kind, nice people who work in HR. We've got one person who does radical candor, so it's moving that way. We've got a few more now. That's great. And this is all anonymous, by the way. I should have said that up front. So go for your life. If you think, oh gosh, actually I'm a bit whatever, then go for it. All right. Okay, fab. Thank you. Clinton, I'll cut to you just while people finish this. Whereabouts do you sit on this? Where did you put yourself, do you think? I wonder if Clinton's got an audio challenge. Looks like his line's muted.
Sorry, I was on mute that time. I would have put myself in the top left, actually, the rule of empathy.
Yeah. I'm up there with you. You know, it's so difficult to have these conversations, and the only way through them is practice. So I'm glad to, hopefully advocates electrics is a nice place to put them. So
But it doesn't necessarily inhibit me from having the conversation. It's just that you might not always enjoy it as much as you'd like to.
Yeah, completely. That's right. There are those conversations where you push through it. Thanks, Clinton. Thanks for your honesty. I'm glad you didn't say, well, I'm a practical candidate. So thanks, everybody. All right, now I'm going to cover this briefly, but there is a reliable framework you can use. It's our core framework from our Talent Builder course, which is something I'll be really happy to talk to you about. And it's A-Star Career Management framework. And these are 5 things. So SCARF is all about risk and some ideas. These are 5 things that if you do them, it will help you hit the sweet spot every time. So here are the 5 A's. Appreciate uniqueness. Assess someone's true capability. Anticipate the future. So I'm not just going to line Clinton up for here's your transactional in your role conversation. Actually help that person think about the future. Align aspirations. So you'll be the bridge between the organization's goals, the industry's movements, and that person's goals. We talked about autonomy as a driver. So actually, making sure that we are in step with people and have that handshake, and then accelerate development. Are you on it with people? Are they practicing things? Are you observing things? What's their plan to develop? What conversations might they need to have? So those are the 5 A's. And the first one is appreciate uniqueness. What makes us us? So we've all got talents. Do we actually spend enough time recognizing those from within our team? And we've all got passions. So I know, for example, a colleague of mine, Dom, was brilliant at Excel, absolutely brilliant about it. He didn't love it. It was just a tool. But everyone all the time said, "Oh, Dom, you're good at Excel. You're good at Excel." And there are plenty of people like that, where actually we don't join up that sweet spot between what really lights them up and what they're really talented at, what their values are. So it might be that somebody's got talent and passion, but maybe the kind of ethos of the organization they're in doesn't quite fit. The way our team runs and feels doesn't kind of sit with them. And the last one is around style. We have a certain way of turning up. And actually, the more we can do to recognize these, if you really appreciate that person's true uniqueness, your conversations will be heaps more productive, fruitful. And those primate drivers reflected in SCARF will be so much less likely to trigger. So please do take the time to appreciate uniqueness. There are loads of things you can do to do that, and we're not going to drain them right now. The second one is assess true capability. So in this world, we'll need to get people more mobile. I might have a view of someone who works for my performance. Really good. Does this against the framework, really every time. But actually, isn't it a shame they had that one meeting 4 months ago and they didn't quite sing in front of the group of people who they need to know. Or we did one piece of shared work with another team that they just didn't expose their full selves and their full contribution. So if you want someone to be more mobile, you've got to think about and help them to consider their performance and their reputation. And the third one is, if you really want to turbocharge ability, getting managers to check in on their support network. So actually in your performance conversation, say, right, who do you know? Do you know this person? Did you go to this talk? And if the answer is, I don't know them, or I didn't actually carve out the time for that, you really want that person to move with radical candor in mind and raising some of these things. You've got to say, well, actually, it's worth doing it. Here's the reasons why. So do you kind of check in with people? So understand people's appreciate uniqueness of people, and then do actually hold a mirror up to them. What's their true perceived capability within the organization? Anticipate the future. Really powerful quote around this. Sometimes I think we're all guilty of this. There's so many moving parts. We can sometimes waste time overthinking. So paralysis by analysis. But the goal of forecasting isn't to predict the future exactly, know exactly which team or exactly what direction. It's about to know enough about where they're going to take meaningful action, which is probably in the form of networking and development and exploring areas, so that we're then ready to pounce. So we don't need to, as managers, shy away from this. Actually, managers have so much more exposure, and leaders do, to the way the industry is moving, the way the organization is moving, and the way individuals' jobs are being impacted. So do partner with your with your managers and leaders to also sense check your view of where the world's changing and try and get as far down the road as you can. And a shocking stat that I'll share, and some research here. Entropy is this nice, clever sounding word for a nasty little thing. You know, it's that time in the week we spend hiding our shortcomings, bureaucracy, avoiding things, politics. It's the opposite of that really lovely in-sync team all pulling in the same direction. And there's a piece of research that colleague of ours, David Clark, was involved in. It's really, really strong, which is those organisations where there is a really strong sense of why, central purpose. It's clear what the organisation is doing. They outperform their peers. So 21.8% revenue growth with those organisations where there was that really clear central sense of purpose versus those where actually things had lapsed and actually things have diverged towards more transactional ways of working. There's a brilliant piece of work by Booz Allen, if you look at Founders Mentality, all about this. But the shocking thing is only 42% of employees actually knew their organisation's vision, mission or values. So actually, you know, we need to do a huge amount to just connect our individuals and appreciating their uniqueness with the organisation and where it's going and why it's important for them. So often we say, well, here's our performance framework, here's where we are against it. We've got to look above and beyond. Particularly among young managers, so there's a piece of work that Burak, who runs our division, was involved in around what high potential managers want. So that's a real group who are moving around a lot and leaving. So things we can do to help align our aspirations. Can we give them development opportunities? Can we give them meaningful work, so connecting to the why of the organisation? Can we get them to foster genuine connections with senior people, people who are shaping the organisation? And can we keep them in a flow state? So can we actually align those aspirations so there's that right degree of stretch and also achievement? So aligning our aspirations is really, really important. And then the last one is accelerate development. So I love this quote: "Dream written down with a date becomes a goal. A goal broken down into steps becomes a plan, and a plan backed with actions makes your dreams come true." But who controls the environment in which you take action? It's your manager. So you have to build in time to get that career plan out, get those 3 or 4 objectives out. So brilliant model by McKinsey, 3x3x3. You should check it out. The first 2 parts of those are you need to think of 3 things that you want to achieve and tell 3 people. Drive accountability around plans and get people to really, really, really check in on those regularly. So I've blasted us through that 5 A's, but hopefully that's been thought-provoking for people. If you, as a manager now, to put your manager hat on here, where do you need to do more? Where do you need to focus your effort for your team? So let's just have a little look at that. I can tell you now, the one that I always am short on is anticipating the future. I love my team to think, are they going to succeed in the next 6 months? Maybe, we're halfway through, we're going to get to that promotion point. How much effort do I put in to me investing time and energy into anticipating the future? It's very limited. And check this out with your HR leaders hat on. This is across all the attendees we've got today. Way more effort needed on anticipating the future and aligning aspirations. So having those great conversations. Okay, all right. So we've covered a lot, and I really have appreciated everyone's attention. I know it's tough. Let's recap on what we covered. So the world of work's changing. There are some primal human drivers within us that if we don't get the emotional side of the conversation right, we can highlight all the internal roles we want. We have to engage with people. We have to recognize those key triggers around SCARF. Radical candor is a really useful way to do that. Please do check that out. And then the 5 A's framework, just a repeatable, easy to kind of reference and access kind of thought process you can go through. You almost have 5 checkpoints. Have I thought, I've got my one-to-one with someone? Have I appreciated uniqueness? Have I actually assessed their true capability and highlighted gaps? Have I actually anticipated the future and helped them get on board with it? Have I aligned my aspirations? Have we had that handshake? And then actually, am I on it? Am I doing up that zip? Am I checking with them all the time on their plans and just nudging them towards success? So I really hope that's been helpful. What's the one thing that you're going to do off the back of today? I'd love to just check in with everyone as a group. We've got 3 minutes left and then we might have just enough time for any questions. What's the one thing we're going to do? I'm going to pop mine in the chat, which is I am going to I'm going to communicate my goals publicly. I actually, in my current role, don't manage anyone, but just going through that, I thought around that importance of actually driving accountability. So that's what I'm going to put on. Shannon, well, let's check out. Yes, do check out. Kim's got also Whitney Johnson, really, really good work, worth reading. Share the model, read more about development. Okay. All right, Clinton, any reflections from you? And then any questions that are lurking in the chat, all the questions while we grab these actions.
So nothing in the chat in terms of questions, because they've obviously all come through.
Right.
And reflections for me, actually, it's really rich, Tim, and it's a prompt for thought. And for me, I'm in the fortunate position actually of just about to expand and have a lot of new members join my team and some transfer into the team. So I think this is a good checkpoint for me to say, right, let's start in the right place in terms of making sure it's people first and not all of the stuff that we've got going on. Let's put the people first. Let's look at what drives them, what's going to make them most excited about where we're about to be heading.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. Got a question on will the recordings be available? So yeah, we did start a recording that will be subject to a review. It will be available. I don't think anybody shared anything outrageously controversial, and it's all anonymized. We'll also pull together a little summary that you'll be able to see on the web of the kind of core content that we talked through as well. And if you have any questions about it, I'm tim.edwards@lhh.com. If there's anything you want to follow up on, I'm really, really happy to talk about it. And please do go to Russell's session tomorrow as well. Russell is a highly engaging, fun person to listen along to, and he'll really bring it to life from the employee standpoint. Okay, and thank you so much for your input as well. Stepping back, being courageous. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. That's been, like I said, I could talk all day about it. So thanks for your patience with me talking at you a lot. And yeah, I wish you all a really great rest of your day. Look after yourselves and look after your teams. And I hope to see you all soon. All right.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, everybody.